Hi, welcome to Yellow Slate, your very own school search engine that helps you find the best schools for your kid based on various filters and parameters. Today, we have Mr. Hywel Bennett, who is from the online school which is GoSchool. It's a revolutionary online school which is based out of India. Let's speak to him and understand more about his experience of working with GoSchool and also the online schooling system in particular. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Well, you've had the experience of working across the world for almost 3 decades. So, what inspired you to get into Indian education, and what's your take on education in India?
Well, it's nearly 4 decades, actually, 38 years of teaching now. And yes, I've taught far and wide, but I've always had a very, very soft spot, a fond attachment for India and Indian culture. I started visiting India in the 1980s. And at that time, I wasn't in education per se. I was involved with charity and development work. I found the culture so interesting. I found the Indian people so open and so friendly. So, being provided with the opportunity to work with an Indian school, albeit in an online capacity, seemed to me to be the perfect thing for me. So it really happened at the right time. Of course, it happened not so long after the pandemic. The pandemic forced us all to
Yeah.
work online. And yes, there were some positives with that, many negatives. It was a learning curve. But when I realized an opportunity had arisen working with and for GoSchool, it seemed to me to be the logical step forward, to be honest. Yes.
But I'm sure you must have been in a traditional offline setup for most of your teaching career, and getting into online space. How do you think that shift happened, and how did you
Mm.
mold yourself to adapt to this?
That was a very real learning curve as well, of course. When I started teaching in 1987, I had no clue about the world of IT, to be honest. I don't suppose many of us did. As time went on, we were forced to be a little bit more ICT compliant, shall we say. But yes, most of my career has been within physical schools. However, things began to change in terms of the preparation of materials being conducted digitally, records were being stored digitally, and so forth. And of course, when the pandemic occurred, it forced us all to do the same. And some of us enjoyed it, some of us did not. I loved it actually. And from that point, I realized I could also have the best of both worlds. I could visit India and work alongside people in India, but also work from my home in England, in Kent, with my family. So it certainly seemed to me to be the perfect option right around. Yes. Okay.
Superb. And speaking about the subjects, you're a specialist in English, history, and also an Edexcel examiner. That's
Yes.
something that not many Indians are familiar with. So, can you take us through what this Edexcel examiner and Edexcel curriculum is? And can you
Oh,
tell how it's different from the others?
yes, of course. Pearson Edcel is an examination board which is completely equivalent to Cambridge, by the way.
Oh,
Although, of course, in India, Cambridge has the higher profile. Pearson Edexcel is just as good. Actually, I would argue in some ways it's better because Pearson Edexcel appears to be somewhat less theoretical and less based on content, but more based on applied knowledge to the real world. So that makes the whole experience somewhat more tangible for students doing Pearson Edcel. That's not me deriding Cambridge. Cambridge is also an excellent examination board as well, of course. But Pearson Edexcel, certainly it's a little bit more forward thinking in terms of its digital readiness for the 21st century. And of course, as well as the mode of learning, as well as how the examination papers are, the other thing about Pearson Edexcel is it's far more flexible. Students are able to sit their exams wherever they please and can transfer the status across to their teaching center without a problem. And certainly up to and including IGCSE level in grade 10, examinations may now be conducted from the comfort of the student's own home, which is something Cambridge are working on, but they're a little bit behind Pearson Edcel with that. So Pearson Edcel, number one, more progressive. Number two, possibly more accessible as well. Okay.
That's interesting. So before we discuss the evaluation process
Yes.
and the acceptance in universities and etc., I would like to understand if it is possible to explain the difference with a small example, be it in English or any other subject, on how is, because for a parent it's interesting to know how their kid is going to learn and how is it different from a different curriculum. So if there is there any topic that you can just throw a broad level light on, and help us understand the difference?
If we were to look at a specific topic, and my primary subject is history, all
Okay.
right. If we were to look at the Pearson Edcel history course, the content appears to be somewhat more international rather than just based on specific locational factors. Because it's international, that makes it somewhat easier to access. Specifically for History A level, Pearson Edcel likes to offer locations to around the world. So there is a paper on Indian history. Cambridge does not offer a paper on Indian history. Pearson Edcel does. So it suits our students down to the ground, primarily because they know a lot of the material already from their Indian school experience. It's just a question then of matching their knowledge with the needs of the examination board, yes.
That's interesting. So till 10th or the board level examinations, you said students can write examinations in in the comfort of their home or anywhere in the
Yes.
world. But what after that? What's the procedure like?
Well, basically, let's deal with the first thing first. Yes, that happens. Then they go into A levels, grade 11 and grade 12. Pearson Edcel, even though they are slightly ahead of Cambridge, are still finalizing this. It should be ready within 18 months, I believe. All such exams will also be ready remotely at that stage too. So Pearson Edcel, then, as we have said, is completely recognized by all universities throughout the world, including India. India recognizes it too. No issue or challenge with that. But what you find is that certain parts of the world tend to veer more towards Cambridge, such as India, whereas other parts of the world, like the Middle East, tends to veer more towards the Pearson Edcel option. It's just, I guess, the nature of the area and the traditional preferences, really. And our job really should be to speak to many of these Indian parents and say, hold on, Pearson Edcel is a wonderful course. Give it a try. And we are getting there with that. We are making some progress with that, of course.
Interesting. So one of the biggest perks of having studying in an online school is the flexibility that it gives, or the possibility for personalization that it offers.
Yes.
So in history or English, in your classes, how do you see that happening? How do you try to personalize the education and make it very interesting for the student?
Well, there are two ways of doing this. The first way of personalizing the learning experience is the way in which the lesson is constructed. It's not a lecture. It's not an opportunity to lecture young people. It's an opportunity to engage them within their own learning, providing them with a sense of agency as they do. In terms of the learning materials, it is possible, completely possible, although this can be said for Cambridge as well, actually, to design tasks that are diverse by nature and also suit the needs of individual students far more. So what I tend to do is I don't always give essays. Essays, the traditional way of responding to a question, of course. I will say, okay, make a blog entry. Make your own quiz, for example, or perhaps engage in a piece of transactional writing about the same. It's very, very important to vary the assessment opportunities. Yes, during the exam, that's standard. But within the learning, within the period of time that the work is being covered, why not make it diverse? Why not make it more engaging? And of course, make it more fun. Because if students feel that, they will actually be more engaged in their learning, deeper learning will take place, and by default, success will be a logical consequence of that. Okay.
That's interesting. And also, Mr. Hywel, I've got to know that you did your MA in leadership in Chinese schools. That's quite interesting. So,
Yes.
what are some insights that you picked up during that course, and how are you trying to implement some of them at GoSchool and all the other places that you work in?
Absolutely. My master's course was a course that specialized in leadership of teaching teams, but at the same time also had some deep relevance to student populations also.
Oh.
And the biggest thing I learned was context. Different parts of the world are more familiar with different leadership styles, be it teachers or students. Okay. Some countries in the world have a high context culture where questions are not really asked of the leaders. It's almost as if the leaders are there to be feared and respected and held at high esteem. That's high context culture. Then I learned about some cultures, predominantly European ones, that are far more collegiate. So that what happens is that all respective stakeholders get together and determine policy. Now, India is somewhere between the two. India is not quite as high context as somewhere like China, which was very high context. But at the same time, it's not quite at the level of Western Europe, where you have a more collegiate approach. So I've learned that with leadership, you need to discover what works best. And you can never, ever assume that it will be identical in each and every case, because that will not happen. It's very easy to create trouble for yourself by going into a high context culture with all guns blazing, or vice versa, going into a low context culture and shouting the odds. Neither approaches work. And I've learned, over the years, not just through my study, but also through my respective leadership styles, and I've been leading schools for quite some period of time, what works and what doesn't. The thing about the Indian context is there's a very strong sense of community here, very strong sense of community and a strong sense of togetherness. So that needs to be exploited. But at the same time, it's very important to understand that people and their responses do need to be scaffolded somewhat. So people do need a little bit of a helping hand to actually get where they need to be. As soon as they are familiar with that, anything can happen. India has so much potential with this. So it is certainly moving in the right direction, but at the end of the day, some hand-holding is required, some guidance, some scaffolding too. Okay.
That's quite interesting. And as an academic director, it's very important that all your teachers are on the same page, because they play a very vital role
Yes.
in executing the vision that the school has. So how do you ensure that this is in place, especially when all the teachers are working virtually? They're all from different parts of the world. And how do you bring them all onto the same page and believe in what you want to deliver as a leader?
Well, the first thing is it starts with recruitment of teachers. We need teachers who embrace our visions. We need teachers to be able to do that. Teachers who want to engage, who want to inspire, who are highly passionate in what they do. And yes, experience is a bonus too. Experience of respective examination boards and within teaching scenarios. But if someone has the passion and the willingness to learn, we'd be happy to take them on if their outlook was the appropriate one, the correct one. In terms of how we ensure we have standards, we operate through something called an LMS, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And our LMS has a range of protocols which every teacher must follow. How lessons are to be taught, how lessons are to be recorded. There are policies, there are procedures. There are guarantees basically to the students in how things will be organized, and that's so very, very important as well. Of course, part of my job as academic director is quality assurance. So I do watch many of the lessons and I ensure that the teaching is of a good standard. If there are one or two issues with teaching, that's not the end of the world. We'll turn that into a training opportunity and a personal development issue. But I think the most important thing is willingness to be part of the dream and not going into this kind of setup as a traditional teacher teaching in a traditional way that relies heavily upon the lecture mode and everything else. I'm looking for a certain methodology at all times. Okay.
That's quite interesting. And you have always been an advocate of the idea that teaching should engage all learners.
Yes.
So can you dig a little deeper into it and tell what kind of activities do you perform in the school or in the class to ensure that all students are engaged? Or can you tell what made you to believe in this ideology?
Okay. Well, we do have small classes, we have small groups, and we insist on that. We think it's counterproductive to have large classes. We are quite aware that some online schools in India have 30, 40 in a class. To me, that defeats the object of it because you're not getting the personalization, you're not getting the deep engagement at that point. So we make sure, and this is what I look for when I observe teachers, that lessons are structured. A lesson is 45 minutes long, for sure, but I want it broken up into various sections. A very brief starter activity, which can be something based on recap, maybe something based on the relevant subject-specific literacy that we'll engage in. Then the key knowledge may be taught in an engaging way, lots of discussion, lots of questions and answers, lots of dialogue, lots of teachers listening to the students, what they say, all right? And that's very, very important that we actually do that. And then to have a brief plenary session at the end, reviewing what has been achieved. Transparency is the key with all of this, making sure the students feel part of the learning process. If they don't feel part of the learning process, they won't want to attend the class. And we want students to come to class because they want to come to class, not because they have to. This is not a chore. This is an enjoyment and an opportunity to enjoy learning, which of course deepens learning too at the same time.
Yeah. So even after this, there's a large set of audience who are still, or maybe parents who are still apprehensive about the online school. So what do you have to tell them about the academic depth or the possibility for emotional development in an online school like GoSchool?
Well, I've already mentioned the fact that we do have small classes. With small classes, it is possible to get through the curriculum quicker and in a more engaging, personalized way, trying to address any issues, any doubts that need to be cleared. It's very much easier to be able to do that in an online environment, actually, okay? Because it's so easy in a class of 30 or 40 to just slip to the back. And teachers, how do they even know the names of the students with such big classes, let alone deal with their needs? So I would say class size is fundamental to our success. and is absolutely fundamental to what we do. But bottom line is, it doesn't really matter if it's an online class or a physical class, the approach needs to be right. Teachers and students work together. And that is how it should be. Teachers need to listen to the students. Of course, students also need to listen to the teachers. And there needs to be a general recognition of boundaries, of course, and also the various rules and protocols that need to be adhered to. But the bottom line is there is so much scope for effective learning online. And we need to remember that young people are very much more well-versed in technology than we are. So they are happy to be in our class because of all the technology opportunities provided by us. So without doubt, they enjoy their learning more. Of course, another thing is, if a student is working from the comfort of their own home, they do not have to struggle with the daily commute. And as we know, somewhere like Mumbai, that's particularly bad, however long it takes to get from home to school. You don't have to worry about, the pushing and the shoving in the corridor. And also when you're in that classroom, online, the focus is upon you. With a class of 30 or 40, that's impossible. That environment is an examination factory. We are not. We believe in the process of learning. Yes, results are important, of course they are, but we also place great emphasis on the process of learning with the very firm conviction and belief that that emphasis on process will naturally lead to higher learning standards anyway. Certainly, as well, promoting a set of soft skills that enable students to succeed at university and within their working life as well. Things like research, collaboration, public speaking, the list goes on. Okay.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming forward and sharing all these thoughts. And it will certainly be of great help for a lot of parents who are looking for an online school. Thank you once again for your time, Mr. Hebb.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much then. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.